welcome. Let's get started. One of my followers made a video at the top, pinned to your in your spaces, and you can play it if you so wish. It kind of is the lyrics I created using ChatGPT, and somebody took it and turned it into a actual song, which is actually pretty awesome. And so I highly recommend checking out the video by Brandon at the top of your screens. All right, let's see what the news are. I don't really have anything specific to discuss today. We can just check out the news. And if you have any questions, comments, you may request to speak if you want to debate my short position in Tesla. Highly recommend any bulls to come up and kind of test their thesis, and they can do it in this space. Anybody's welcome to request to speak and test their thesis. FSD V13 was released over the weekend to a few people, and we've seen some videos, but it's really hard to tell at this point how good the software is just from a few videos. This is obviously a group of YouTubers or influencers that are Tesla friendly, that Tesla sends out to first. And but of course, it's a major milestone that V13 is now with external customers. We have a new speaker. Let's see what. Oh, never mind. All right, so let me see how many people have it. So right now, it's just a very small group of people, maybe a handful. I haven't watched any of the videos, but the usual feedback with the first release is always it's very smooth. Doesn't make mistakes, etc. So I haven't seen anything unusual so far, but I'm keeping my eye on it, and it's going to take a couple of months, I think, for it to get pushed out to the entire or the majority of the eligible fleet, which is how I define wide release. And so I think that's going to happen maybe February, March, best case scenario. But so far, early indications have been very positive. So maybe it'll happen quicker. Maybe it'll happen by Christmas. Who knows? But Tesla usually takes its time. They need people to use it and collect some data to make sure everything's okay. Yunta Sai, a Tesla employee, said, "This is an insane product push on the week of his birthday. Tesla refactored the entire system to drastically simplify the pipeline, direct photons to control, yet providing a lot more functionality under the same unified framework. It is probably one of the biggest rewrites in years when we began set foot on the journey of photon count 4 years ago. Thanks across the teams for getting to the finish line from data, vision, compiler, system, firmware, UI, QA, PM, and a lot of other teams he may have missed," he says, "working insanely hard 24/7. So far, the only people I know are Dirty Tesla, Omar, and AI Driver. There's some new functionality added to the software. It can unpark, reverse to 3-point turns, and those are some of the key ones. But it looks like it's not, so far, it's not feature complete, obviously. We're going to see we're going to have to see some improvements to school zones and emergency vehicle handling, without which you, of course, can't be autonomous, really. And then some of the things that we had discussed in this space, like context length scaling and size scaling, have not been yet rolled out. So the version that went out to Omar, Dirty Tesla, and Chris, AI Driver, so far don't have the main feature complete, larger scale, and context length scaling that I think will lead to some improvement in intervention data, but we'll have to see how much. So that's TBD. It's interesting though that Tesla decided to push this out to external customers before these improvements were implemented. All right. In other news, so it's going to take a few months for us to understand how good the software is. I'm going to be tracking the Tesla FSD tracker. In other news, Cybertruck, Tesla introduced leasing for the Cybertruck, and then a few days later, they lowered the price quite a bit. So let's look at that, get the numbers. Tesla has reduced the lease pricing for the Cybertruck in the US by up to 13%, applying to both all-wheel drive and Cyber Beast models. So the Cyber Beast is $999, all-wheel drive is $899, 10% decrease, so $100 a month decrease. I think this is, I mean, especially the all-wheel drive model is an excellent product that I think will sell eventually well, but the adoption or the demand growth seems maybe a little slower than they expected. But I think in the longer term, it'll probably be a great product. Sawyer tweeted that the next goal on Tesla's plate is Q1 launch of FSD in Europe and China. That's TBD, and of course requires pending regulatory approval. They labeled it, and in my opinion, the primary reason why FSD is not yet approved in Europe is not the functionality or technical challenges. I think it's more, regulators protecting their homegrown automakers, and probably the same may apply in China as well. So I don't see why those reasons are not going to be applicable in Q1 of next year. So I guess we'll see if they get to pending a regulatory approval. Thank you to those of you. Let me know your code checks in YouTube live chat. Libby, Drew, Jay Warren reminds me in YouTube live chat that Craig Irwin capitulated. Craig Irwin was a longtime bear, and he raised his price target from something like $50 a share to like $380 a share or something. The actual levels don't really matter too much. The idea here is that even a bear analyst, sell side analyst, is now bullish on Tesla stock, which I think is a warning to Tesla bulls that there aren't that many bears left. And I honestly don't know of anybody else except for me who is shorting the stock. People have said Gordon Johnson in the replies to my tweet earlier today, but I don't think Gordon takes, or at least as far as we know, he doesn't take positions in Tesla stock, or he doesn't disclose them. So I don't know if he's short or not. And so I don't really know any other. So that's one of the reasons why I'm short the stock, that I think the sentiment is very bullish. Even the bear analysts have turned bulls. So Craig Irwins from Roth Capital, he raises price target from $85 to $380 per share, and his points are: this quarter is probably the last quarter of relative weakness. Now Elon has got a new pool of buyers, conservatives that might not have looked at EVs quite as closely in the past, that allow an acceleration of demand in the US core US market. I don't see very many negative catalysts. There are abundant positive catalysts. Bias is now to the upside. The market may be huge, but they are doing big things. Man, this is a really interesting flip from a bear analyst. I think all of these things have been true for the last year, really, and we'll see in what size Republicans start buying Teslas because of Elon's support of Trump. On FSD, Craig says, where I need to look at things a little more differently than how I did previously is we'll look at incremental solution for FSD and the incremental solutions for robotaxis. The use of lidar is not long-term sustainable because of the cost. It's something that does need to come out of Waymo vehicles over the longer term. As I've talked to more of the engineers involved in these different projects, Craig has learned that there's often 2 or 3 teleoperation engineers. Interesting. Basically, human operators there to catch something that goes wrong. Tesla even started hiring teleoperation engineers last week. Tesla is not going to do any worse than Waymo. If they're more intent to focus on an optical-only solution, I think computing at the edge, some of this technology that's being brought to bring down the energy consumption for the computer is something that Tesla is going to be more adept at. I think they're really contender in the long run. On Cybercab, Craig said, we're going to see incremental progress and people are going to be able to have a tangible experience. And that's what I think drives value in stock and drives enthusiasm to own the stock, he says. Okay. So nothing that we haven't heard before. I'm just looking for new information. I don't really see much. For those of you who just joined, I published a lyrics of ChatGPT of a song created by ChatGPT, and someone made a video of it. You can watch that through the link at the top of our screens, the tweet at the top of our screens. Tesla announced an annual 2024 holiday update. Let's see if there's anything unusual here. Tesla app on Apple Watch. Save dashcam and sentry mode clips to phone. Auto shift between drive and reverse on stalkless Model 3. Maintenance summary on your screen. Sirius XM available for Model 3Y and Cybertruck. Set arrival energy as destination. So these are minor updates that, of course, together become a major holiday update. Rear cross traffic alert. Okay. Cybertruck custom wraps and license plate customization. Let me just skim through the rest of it, see if there's anything unusual here. Navigation will dynamically route around road closures. That's a good one. Vehicles without premium connectivity can now see traffic on their navigation route. That's interesting. That's interesting, actually. Why would they do that? When navigating to a supercharger upon arrival, you will be notified on the touchscreen of any stalls that are currently out of service. Okay. Sawyer put out a post that asked his followers, if you own a Tesla, how often do you use FSD supervised? Out of 14,000 votes, 59% said daily. 15% said weekly. But we know from Tesla's quarterly miles data that most people don't use FSD. If they did, those miles would be going up much faster. I mean, it's not even a close call. My guess is that maybe 100,000 people use it daily. And if there are 14,000 votes and 60% voted daily, that's a large chunk of them voting either that or the other explanations. But in any case, I think this poll is more representative of the bias of people on X, Tesla followers on X, rather than the actual anywhere close to being the actual data. Tesla has further extended its 5-year 0% interest loan incentive in China for Model 3 and Model Y to December 31st. We also have news of, or rumors of, BYD getting ready to make major price cuts as well in December. And BYD is now, as of November, they are one of the top 4 vehicle automakers in the world. They're now past Ford, Honda, and a couple of the big ones. So BYD, a company that many of us, including myself, thought wouldn't amount to much, has become a top 4 automaker. I mean, if you remember Elon's interview with Bloomberg about a decade ago, when he got asked about BYD, he just started laughing. And he didn't see it as competition. But I think over the last 10 years, Chinese automakers, especially BYD, have grown very rapidly. And at least on their hybrids, they're profitable. And their profits from hybrids appear to be allowing them to cut prices on their EVs very rapidly. So BYD has been able to keep up with Tesla in price cuts, making their EVs affordable in China. And they're now exporting across the world as well. BYD is also building a factory in Mexico and hopes to be able to dominate in at least Latin America as well, if not export to the US. So I think it's going to be very difficult for EVs to overcome this pressure from hybrids without FSD. And, I don't think FSD is going to be unsupervised for some time. But, who knows? Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they will make it unsupervised in Q2 in select areas. I looked through AI drivers videos and Dirty Tesla's videos. I didn't really see anything unexpected with the V13 release. So far, just a few people have it. By the end of the year, maybe a few thousand people should have it. But I think the wide release to the majority of the eligible fleet, which would be hundreds of thousands of, if not millions of vehicles in the US, is going to be next spring. And I think there's some structural reasons for that, but we'll see. I mean, it seems like the first few feedback is very positive. AI driver says steering wheel jitter is gone. Okay. And others agree. AI driver says, he said FST 12.5 was smoother than the majority of Ubers that he's been in. FST 13.2 is smoother than any Uber ride he's ever been in by far. And he says when people ride in a Robotaxi, they won't want a human driver anymore, guaranteed. Yeah, interesting. Those are some big claims. He has videos of 3-point turns, avoiding object on road. Okay, let's go to Dirty Tesla. Dirty Tesla Chris says drove FST 13.2 for 40 miles and almost an hour in hurry mode. He did nothing besides use the scroll wheel to lower his speed one time because he saw a cop. Okay. Wife of Dirty Tesla says, Stephanie says, V13 is much more assertive than previous versions. The car accelerates to get ahead of a slower moving vehicle so it can change lanes to follow the route instead of sitting back and waiting until the last minute. This was in standard mode. Chill mode might have behaved differently, she says. Chuck Cook says, I don't see any safety issues that would keep V13.2 from going wide. It's better than 12.5.6.3, Chuck Cook says. Chris says he's speechless as FSD 13.2 drives Stephanie and him to GameStop and then backs into parking space. All right. I don't really know any other Tesla news. We talked about the holiday update. We talked about V13. We talked about Cybertruck lease price cuts. So let's switch to other things. Unless if anybody has any questions, you may be welcome to request to speak. GameStop is down 5% today. I think the company is overvalued. The situation with GameStop is very similar to Rivian. They're down since I short. They actually increased my short. They're down about 15% in the last few days. They have very little earnings, so they're basically break even. Bottom line, 200 PE ratio. Market cap is $13 billion. They have a few $1 billion of cash, and some people talk about their new ventures or whatever, but I haven't seen anything that's that would change the conversation here. I think it's more of a kind of remnants of the hype that was rampant a couple of years ago, and we'll see how that plays out. But I doubt it's going to. I highly doubt it's going to become as rampant as it was when the interest rates were basically 0%. MicroStrategy down 2% today, as of right now, down 13% in the past 5 days. I increased my MicroStrategy short, and I might increase it more. In the last year, MicroStrategy has gone up 6 times in the last really 10 months or so. This year, mostly year to date, MicroStrategy stock is down up about 5-6 times. And I watched some videos and listened to his presentations, Michael Saylor's presentations about why they should be trading more than net asset value, which is your assets minus liabilities, essentially their Bitcoin holdings. And I don't buy his argument. I think it's just, it's pretty amazing what he's been able to do. My guess is that if Bitcoin starts going down in a material way, so let's say 20% down, 30% down from current levels of $95,000. So let's say back below, 60,000. So 30% below where it is today. I think MicroStrategy stock would collapse. It's essentially a levered play on Bitcoin. And some of the statements that he's making about 0% interest rate or, limited downside risk and all that, I think is just pure BS. And I'm going to dig into this more. Like I don't know this for certain. Okay, maybe he is right. Who knows? But my initial reaction and some more research this weekend is the company is a bit of a house of cards. Luce, how are you?
All good, Yaman. How are you?
Good.
Are you ready to short Tesla, to triple the short?
You're shorting Tesla now?
No, I mean, are you ready to triple the short?
Triple the short? No, I'm not ready yet. But one of the options, yeah. I mean, who knows? Maybe it will continue to rise. Maybe FSD will become unsupervised, and Cybertruck production will increase, and 4680 production will increase. Maybe energy margins will continue to go higher, and installations will increase. Maybe Trump will clear some of this regulation issue ahead of energy. And in those situations, the fundamentals of the company would definitely improve quite a bit. So, go ahead.
I went all in another stock. Do you want to know what stock?
All in on the long side?
I also sold some covered calls, but if they don't go in, then I'm long.
Okay. What is it?
ASML, you know it?
Oh, yeah. So you're bullish on the company?
Yeah.
I mean, they went down quite a bit. ASML obviously produces equipment for TSMC, right?
Yeah, they are the only one with the technology basically to produce AI chips. Yeah.
So why do you like them?
For a lot of reasons. They have extremely strong financials. They have a very stable outlook, which logically speaking, is going to increase revenue for sure, at least in my opinion. They are undervalued a little bit. They are geopolitically placed very well because they are super important for the diversification of chip productions outside of Taiwan because of Taiwan problematics with China. A lot of reasons. It's an incredible company, incredible technology which nobody has, and everybody is 10 years away from achieving if they achieve it.
Yeah.
So
All
many
right,
reasons.
let's talk about that. By the way, Drew Soul gifted 5 Valley Analyst memberships on YouTube. So you're welcome to head over to YouTube if you want a membership to the channel. From now on, what I'm going to do is these spaces will not be recorded. From now on, spaces on X. This is the last one that will be recorded. Okay, so if you want to watch the recording, listen to the recording, you're going to have to do it on YouTube. Okay. And but the space will be here. The recording will be on X, as long as X allows spaces. I intend to just keep these here for everyone, free and open. But if you want to listen to the recording, you're gonna have to go to YouTube. And I highly recommend YouTube Premium membership. Highly recommend for people, especially if you listen to Tesla Live Premium membership, because just the time you save not watching ads more than benefits you than the cost of the YouTube membership. Just the ads you wouldn't be watching during Tesla Live benefits is enough benefit if you do the calculation, like hours, per your time value for your time saved and everything. And this is kind of, and also like you're able to watch anything or listen to anything with your screen off on YouTube if you're a premium member, and it's only like $10-15 a month. So I think it's highly beneficial for people. I don't have many monthly subscriptions. The one thing I have is YouTube Premium and ChatGPT Advanced Voice, which I use many times a day. And I'm also X Premium member as well. So I think with Grok 3, it'll finally be worth doing it. But those are the 3 monthly memberships I have, really. So, thank you, Drew, for the 5 memberships. Then what I'm going to do is, like I thought about potentially after a few days or so putting the recordings for members only. Maybe that can be a benefit for the members, but I haven't really decided on that yet. And I'm going to create a video that's going to be published. 10 reasons why I shorted Tesla. type of thing. And it's going to be low production quality, but at least there's going to be one place where you can just look at all the reasons. Let's see. AW Production says, pro tip, subscribe to YouTube Premium for a year to save even more. Okay, great. All right. So, Luce, I think ASML is a good play as long as you're positive on demand for these GPUs, right? Because ASML produces product for like equipment for TSMC to manufacture NVIDIA, AMD, Tesla chips and other chips, right? And TSMC is really where, like, NVIDIA needs TSMC, and TSMC does need NVIDIA, but TSMC can't survive without NVIDIA. NVIDIA can't really survive without TSMC right now. So that's one of the reasons why I'm short NVIDIA. I don't think NVIDIA really has much of a. I think TSMC will continue to squeeze NVIDIA's margins going forward. And then ASML, this is a company I haven't really looked up that much, Luce. Like, if I were you, if I was going long on ASML, I would look into the technology of this equipment that they create, and I would look at who are their competitors, if they can do the same thing. Like, do they have any AMD to their NVIDIA? Is it just a matter of just the first few years they're able to do this, and then somebody can disrupt them later on, kind of thing? But the valuation is pretty reasonable. It looks like it's come down 40%. ASML holding come down 40%, $280 billion market cap, 38 PE ratio, and a 1% dividend yield. So it seems reasonable to me, but I'm negative on the entire idea of this AI hype. So in the shorter term, I think some of these stocks have gone up way too much, way too high. But if you put a gun to my face, ASML might be one of the stocks I go long on, and TSMC would be the other one. So why not TSMC, Luce?
Well, not TMS. Can you repeat it?
TSMC. TSMC.
TSMC. Sorry, I always forget the letters because of Taiwan and the situation with China. Very simple. If China invades Taiwan, TSMC goes I don't know, to zero, something like that.
Well, don't you think ASML would also be affected in that situation?
So generally speaking, in the short term, yes. But what is unique about ASML, it's the fact that geopolitically they are extremely valuable. All the most influential countries in the world, from the USA, Europe, Japan, and so on, are trying to diversify the chip manufacturing process and to not basically depend on Taiwan. Everybody is trying to open their fabs, which will lead to a situation in which capacity will probably outpace the demand, at least in the capacity of producing chips. And who is gonna benefit from that is ASML. And if Taiwan gets invaded, they are even more in a hurry to basically not dependent on Taiwan anymore.
Okay, well, good luck to you. We have a new speaker, Ben. Go ahead.
Yeah, I don't know if this was already addressed with ASML, but the CFO stated that he expects revenue from China to drop to 20% from 47% from where it is right now.
Luce, what do you think?
So they basically prohibited the exportation of some technology from ASML to China. I think this is why you are referring to that, right? and but I think it's doesn't matter really. Doesn't matter.
Okay. We have a question in YouTube live chat about Tesla. The question is, Dan B asks, should I sell 50% of my Tesla position and rebuy under $300? I'd love to own more long term. So for me to answer a question like that, I would have to know your entire financial picture, like your income, your expenses, your goals, risk tolerance, what else is in your portfolio, and a bunch of other considerations like taxes and a bunch of others. So it's impossible for me to answer a question like that. What I can tell you is that I think the downside risk right now is higher than the upside potential. That's it. That's all I can say based on what I know. And I'm happy to discuss Tesla's fundamentals, any segment you want. I challenge every bull in the space, outside the space, to come up to the speaker board and have their thesis tested. But I haven't heard of anyone doing that yet, which is amazing, which is incredible. But it's not also very surprising. Luce?
So this is for you, Yaman, something interesting about ASML with NVIDIA. So basically, one of the reasons why the stock dropped was because the outlook for basically the machinery was not growing how they expected, which means basically that Taiwan almost doesn't want to increase capacity for NVIDIA and so on, which is interesting, right?
Yeah. Okay, I asked ChatGPT, why would someone invest in ASML versus TSMC and vice versa? And here's what it said. Okay. I think ChatGPT or other, whatever chatbot you use is a great way to kind of just get the first read on companies or investment opportunities. So ASML and Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, TSMC, are pivotal players in the semiconductor industry, each offering distinct investment opportunities. ASML, role in the industry, financial performance, and investment considerations. So let's do a quick read. ASML, based in the Netherlands, is a leading manufacturer of photolithography systems essential for semiconductor fabrication. Notably, it is the sole supplier of advanced extreme ultraviolet lithography machines, which are critical for producing cutting-edge chips. Okay. So, Luce, if I'm TSMC and I don't want to use ASML's equipment for my 2 nanometer process that's upcoming, who do I go to?
Nobody.
Really? I have no other option?
Look, the difference in technology between NVIDIA and AMD, it's way smaller between than ASML and their competitor. They are decades, like 5, 8, 10 years away minimum.
Okay. Who though? Which company is 5, 10 years away?
Canon and Panasonic, maybe, if I remember correctly. Because of the optics, because they basically are capable with all the optics, and they also sell some machinery that is not as advanced, basically.
Okay, let me just take a quick read of that. Who are ASML's competitors? Sole provider of extreme ultraviolet lithography machines, essential for manufacturing advanced semiconductors. However, several companies are developing alternative technologies that could challenge ASML dominance. Canon, so that's what you said. Canon is advancing nano imprint lithography technology. Okay. Nikon Corporation, deep ultraviolet lithography. Okay. And Shanghai Microelectronics Equipment. So those are 3 companies. You got Canon, and then I think you said Panasonic, right? All right. And then financial performance. As of December 2, ASML stock price stands 707, reflecting a 3% increase previous close, whatever, skip that part. Investing in ASML provides exposure to a company with a near monopoly in advanced lithography equipment. Its growth is closely tied to capital expenditures by semiconductor manufacturers. I mean, that's your primary risk right there. So, in my opinion, these high capex spending from big tech companies are going to slow down, if not decline. And that would reverberate across the supply chain in all of these stocks, including starting with NVIDIA's competitors and some of the more high-flying, kind of like the Rivians of the semiconductor industry, like the SMIC that blew up. So that's kind of like Rivian stock going down. And I think NVIDIA is more like Tesla stock, and I think that's going to go down next. That's why I'm short NVIDIA. And I'm also looking to short some more of that as well in other ways. So, and then after that, TSMC and ASML wouldn't be spared from that decline either, but ASML and TSMC are a lot more reasonably priced than NVIDIA. So if I were to go along any company in this industry, I would probably go along TSMC or ASML or both to spread the risk a little bit. Go ahead.
So many of those high-end chips are not only going to be used for GPUs and so on, but also for the chips in the Robotaxis, the chips in the Optimus, the chips in whatever AI gadget there is going to be. So it's not only interconnected with GPUs.
Okay. TSMC, role in the industry headquartered in Taiwan, is the world's largest and most advanced contract chipmaker, commanding over 60% of the global foundry market. It manufactures semiconductors for major firms, including Apple, NVIDIA, AMD. Investing in TSMC offers exposure to a company at the forefront of semiconductor manufacturing, benefiting from the growing demand for AI and high-performance computing chips, despite geopolitical risk associated with its location. TSMC diversified customer base and technological leadership position it well for sustained growth. Okay. TSMC is more reasonably priced than ASML though, Lucia, right? So I think the TSMC's ratios are a bit more cheaper than ASML. What do you make of that?
I make of that that the geopolitical situation is extremely dangerous, and China is going to invade Taiwan at some point, and ASML, it's going to probably, there is a good chance that ASML is going to benefit from that, and TSMC is going to be annihilated.
How confident are you that China is going to invade Taiwan in the next 5 years?
So it's pretty much a necessity, because they cannot produce AI chips. They are basically cut off from ordering high-end chips from the world. So it's a necessity, it's a technological necessity. I'm 60 to 70% chance.
Wow. Ben, are you an ASML investor or do you invest in the industry?
So in my opinion, I do have a position in the ETF SMH. That's rather boring, but I just think it's too difficult to predict which, semiconductor stock is going to be the winner from here with, bringing out new chips. Unless you have expertise in that field, I think your best bet is to go with SMH, which still provides very attractive returns based on recent performance.
Okay, thank you, Ben. Lucia, here's what ChatGPT says about Taiwan, China. While the possibility of a Chinese invasion of Taiwan cannot be entirely dismissed, current analyses suggest that such an event is unlikely in the immediate future. China may continue to employ alternative strategies, such as economic pressure, cyber operations, and military posturing, to influence Taiwan without resorting to direct military action. Ongoing developments in regional security dynamics and international relations will play crucial roles in shaping this complex situation. Recent developments in China-Taiwan relations. China is studying Russia's sanctions evasion to prepare for Taiwan conflict, according to Wall Street Journal. Reuters says Taiwan president speaks about China with ex-Speaker Pelosi while in Hawaii. And then news.com.au, nuclear threat, horror, China warning. Interesting. Assessing the likelihood of a Chinese invasion of Taiwan within the next 5 years involves analyzing various military, political, and strategic factors. While tensions have escalated, many experts consider full-scale invasion improbable in the near term. Military considerations, political dynamics, expert assessments. A 2023 survey by Center for Strategic International Studies revealed that most US and Taiwanese experts do not believe China can effectively execute an invasion at present. They consider a blockade or quarantine more likely coercive measures in the next 5 years. Operational challenges. The Taiwan Strait, approximately 90 miles wide, presents significant logistical hurdles for an amphibious assault. Its choppy waters and extreme weather conditions limit viable invasion periods to a few months each year. Transporting hundreds of thousands of soldiers across the strait would require thousands of ships and extensive time during which Taiwan could mount defensive operations. Analysts suggest that while China is enhancing its military capabilities, it may not yet possess the necessary assets to execute a successful invasion. What, Lucia, do you know those specific months of the year where they can invade?
No, yeah, man.
All right, let me see. Okay, you had your hand up. Do you have something to say?
So for all, like, if they blockade Taiwan, it's the same exact thing. As if they cut off the supply of chips to the entire world, it's the exact same thing if they invaded it. The only reason why Japan and the USA cares about Taiwan is the chips. This is why they are trying to build their fabs and to import more machinery from ASML to diversify and not depend on Taiwan. If they don't depend on Taiwan, Taiwan can be conquered in any moment. They will not care.
Okay. The few months of the year when it might be easier to invade Taiwan based on geographical and environmental factors are typically in late spring and early fall. Okay. So you might, the next window is April, May. Late April to June. Weather in Taiwan Strait is relatively calm, with fewer typhoons and less rough seas. Visibility and conditions for amphibious and aerial operations are generally better. All right. And that's September to early October. So May or June. How about that? April to June. Q2. Let's just say Q2. So we'll put that up there for as a Q2. December to February, the Q2 risk. December to February is challenging period because strong northeast monsoon winds create rough seas in Taiwan Strait, making naval operations difficult. Yeah, very interesting. Well, thanks, Lucia. Thanks for bringing this up. Do you have any long or short positions aside from that one?
No, yeah, no.
Do you have any opinions on the following list? Tesla, Rivian, Palantir, MicroStrategy, GME, GM, and Ford.
I have an opinion on most of them.
Okay.
Tesla overpriced.
Let's leave Tesla to the end. What about the other ones?
Rivian possibly it's gonna be supported by California government. which it's insane, but it's a very good chance for Rivian. GME.
Well, Rivian is down 5% today, and thank you to Rivian investors. I'm not squeezed out on my Tesla short today, but you never know. Tomorrow's a new day. So Rivian is down 5% after I tripled my position Rivian short last week. So I might actually close some of that. We'll see. But I mean, the company is going to zero, I think. So maybe I'll just wait. GM, what do you think about that one?
General Motors, I don't think much about them. No, I don't follow GM.
Well, the stock is up more than 100% in the last 6 months, which is a primary reason why I shorted the stock. I don't think the companies or prospects improved that much in the last 6 months, although the stock is very cheap. It's only 5.9 PE ratio, $60 billion market cap. Just cheap in the sense of the PE ratio. Okay, but if you have a long enough time horizon and accept that Tesla will dominate in the longer term and Robotaxi will dominate, I don't think GM has much of a future, just like Ford. And that's obviously reflected somewhat in the PE ratio, but who knows to what extent. I just don't think the company's prospects improved that much in 6 months, or in the last year. It actually dropped quite a bit in the last 5 days. It's down in the last 5 days 10%. So that's interesting. I think this is another zero. So we'll see. Luce?
Have you already expressed an opinion on V13? Or what is your opinion on V13?
Well, it's too early to draw any conclusions, I think. So some of the facts are, it's out to about a handful of people who are posting videos. And I think I saw one negative post about it where the person had a couple of interventions, wasn't happy about it. And then everything else has been very positive. But that's very much in line with the early release of the software every time. And it's going to take a couple of months for us to see it in data on FSD Tracker. And that's my primary source for measuring FSD progress. I think today FSD is 99% reliable when it comes to safety critical interventions, 99% reliable, so 2 nines. And then if you consider all other interventions, then 90%, so 1 9 reliable. And I think safety critical will have to get to 6 nines. So that's 4 orders of magnitude improvemements. And I think that's going to take some time. I think there's going to be a period where, as soon as your miles per critical intervention goes above the average commute distance, which is, I think, 40, 50 miles, of course, a lot of people will start reporting most of their drives don't have safety critical intervention. I think that's expected. But I think that Tesla will need to get to 1 million miles per safety critical intervention for nationwide mass adoption of robotaxis. And before that, it's not going to be material to the bottom line. Like if they introduce it around Omar's block or Austin, Center City, where, it's like, which is what Waymo and Cruise did. They literally had like one route that they would go. It was more like a bus route. If Tesla does that, it's nowhere near being ready. And I think, as we know, Tesla took some time to collect intensive data from the Warner Brothers studio, getting ready for the We Robot event. That took them, I think, a couple of months. So now imagine, that was just 1 or 2 blocks, basically. So imagine if you had to do that on a citywide basis, So if that's what they're banking on to start the unsupervised in Austin or San Francisco, you're going to need, even for that, you're going to need a few months. So that, I guess, aligns with their Q2 and everything. But just like Cruise, just like Waymo, I don't know how useful that's going to be to people. I don't know what the adoption is going to be, right? I don't know what the pricing is going to be. There's going to be ups and downs where people, preventing these robotaxis doing something that they want to do, like we see in San Francisco with Waymo cars, Cruise cars. There's going to be backlash. There's going to be permitting back and forth with regulators. There's going to be accidents. So this is going to be a very thorny road for the next 5-10 years before we can get to vision only adoption across the nation. We're not even talking other countries which have a whole nother layer of thorn, which is, they want to protect their, homegrown automakers. So, yeah, I think it's going to be a long road. I think people are way overestimating how quickly this is going to happen. But West Hicks is on the board now, and West Hicks is more optimistic than I am with FSD and Robotaxi. So let's see what he has to say.
And I think it seems to be almost obviously lining up right now is FSD 14 will be the first monetization of ride sharing. Right now in 13, we're going to work out all the kinks, finish all the missing pieces, if you will, and then position ourselves for 14 and then start rolling it out. I jumped up here, though, because you made a comment about if Tesla had a small route somewhere that I'm paraphrasing, like it wouldn't be a big deal. I think that's exactly what's going to happen is we're going to iterate along the way, something small, grow bigger, keep going. I really didn't understand your point. But your 5 to 10 year thesis, if I understand it right, that we're not going to have full autonomy for 5 to 10 years, I don't know what you're saying, to be honest. Doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I think if it's just a block or two or one route in one city, you're going to get some headlines and everything. So maybe people will buy the stock because of it. I would expect maybe some of the hype to increase, just like, it does every time Tesla's an event and all that. But fundamentally, to the bottom line, it's not going to be beneficial for 5-10 years, which I think is the time needed for a nationwide mass adoption of robotaxis. I think that's going to take 5-10 years. Happy to discuss, dig into it more if you want.
Yeah, I would. I don't understand why. Look, I think, and tell me if I'm wrong, that you're basing a lot of that on the FSD tracker. Am I right?
Yes.
Which I think is crazy. I mean, I think most people have proved. I mean, look, this is a handful of people manually entering stuff subjectively. I don't see how you could possibly take it seriously.
Yeah. So I asked Elias how many people entered data for V12. And I'll pin this at the top of our screens of our exchange. I said, how many testers have entered data for V12? And Elias said 150 and 93 testers just for 12.5. So obviously that's more than a handful.
I think that proves my point. I don't understand how you could say that's a meaningful amount of people.
Well, I told you, you said handful. I said it's more than a handful. And 150 is more than a handful. In fact, it's 30 hands.
Well played.
And I think the other thing to note here is, we know some of these people who enter data. I think Elias has proven over the years that he's very capable. I have never seen him, make a bombastic statement or be uber optimistic or uber pessimistic about FSD. He's clearly a Tesla supporter, a great contributor to the community. And then the other person is Kaz, who has years of data, making videos about his Robotaxi FSD. He also has an optimism bias. So I I think 2 of them probably have a large chunk of the miles entered. But at a minimum, we know that, at least I know that, they've proven to be reliable in the past. So I think that goes a long way with me, maybe not with you. That's okay. But also, the data comes from a geographically diverse group of testers. So not just from one city, not just somebody who has proven to be too optimistic in the past. And so there's, of course, some of that gray area in the Tesla FSD tracker. I don't think anyone's claiming it to be perfect. And I think some of the things that people do, which is focus way too much on one specific software update or one geography of the tracker, like say Texas data, or the tracker also shows some data for weather conditions, night versus daytime type of presentations. I think those are, you're kind of digging your way too much into detail because they don't have the tracker doesn't have the data set you would need for that kind of analysis. But on a nationwide basis and major update basis, so V10 to V11 to V12 looked collectively, I think you can draw some conclusions. And it's been helpful for me in the past. Who knows, it'll be helpful in the future. But that's where it stands today. Go ahead, Wes.
Yeah, I have every reason to think these are good people, well-intended, doing their very best. But if it was my tracker that I made, I would still say it's unreliable if you have 150 people involved. It's just not enough. And the reason that I think this conversation is important, every time I talk in here, I think of the new people. I think of the audience, and I think of people that are new to Tesla and are trying to figure this thing out. And without knowing any better, they may actually look at that and make some decisions like you are. And and I just 100% disagree that you can even use that for your basis of any important decisions, any financial decisions. I mean, you can, it's up to you, but it's just a small sample set and completely unreliable.
Okay. What sample size would lead you to say, okay, we have enough testers?
It would be something that Tesla would have to do. And they basically would just have to show us the data they have. I don't have a number for the FSD tracker, but here's what I do have.
No,
I'm
hold
looking.
on. So you're saying that no amount of testers would lead you to say, this is enough. From a statistics perspective, this sample size is enough.
Yeah, if it's outside of Tesla's control, I wouldn't rely on it.
Yeah, well, I guess that's where we disagree philosophically, because I think it is a mistake to take management's word 100% at face value, any management, especially a management team that just has proven to be very optimistic in the past on this very topic. And I think there is something to be said about third-party data, third-party verification of claims, independent sources. And I just find it really interesting that you're claiming that the sample size is too small, and yet you don't have a number in mind where it's big enough. You just have philosophically disagree with this tracker.
Yeah, well, it's two things. Not only is it a small sample size, but like you said, even if it was larger, I don't know that it's good data. So it doesn't matter if you have lots of data, if it's bad data.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I wish you luck with your investments. Learn code.
Sorry, I don't know. I didn't mean to be a speaker. Sorry about that.
Okay. Luce.
Can I say my observations about Widerten?
Yeah.
So we have this new version, which is basically a complete rewrite. It has a new hardware and the same parameters amount. It's very interesting because I don't think the hardware, I don't think the cameras will play a big role going forward. And also the reaction time and so on, I think will not really impact the reliability going forward. What is very interesting to me is the improvement keeping the same parameters amount and just rewriting the software. The rewrite of the software took 1 year and a half. And if we consider the parameters staying the same, and we just consider rewriting the software, improving the software, and so on, I think it's quite bullish. But not having the data from the FSD tracker, it's impossible really to say what improvement is being made. But it's very interesting.
Yeah, I highly recommend people to not like focus on one source. I think it's better to kind of triangulate using different sources. I watch these videos too. I look at posts. I consider management statements. I don't disregard them 100%, but I don't take them at face value 100% either. I look at statements from others who are making similar efforts. I have lots of conversations in my personal life with Tesla owners. I test FSD myself. I've tested every single software that came out in the last 2 years, at least, maybe 3. And I researched the technology. So, Wessex.
Yeah, I think sometimes what gets lost in these conversations is kind of what game we're playing. I think both of you and Luce, are playing a more of a trader's game. I think Luce just sold his position recently. You have a short position. I'm playing the long game, buy and hold. And I think sometimes, people don't know, like I think Luce said it a moment ago, it was overpriced. But in what context? From a trade standpoint, perhaps. But if you're buying and holding, and we've got FSD 13 and 14 coming up, is it smart to start building your war chest now if you haven't already? I would say so. But I just want to add that point about the context. I think that's helpful.
Okay. I'm really more interested in fundamental discussions, and it doesn't matter who's saying what. I think it's okay to kind of highlight if some, just for bias purposes, that Lucius sold his shares. I think everyone in this space knows that, and then I think everyone in this space knows that I'm net short the stock. So, but do you have anything meaningful material to contribute to this conversation, Wes?
I think I just did. Luce just said it was a bad time to buy right now, and maybe you guys can make a business case why, or explain why that would be the case.
Do you have any comments around Tesla's fundamentals, like why deep down technology-wise you think we're wrong? Let's say, for example, maybe you agree that it takes a few hundred miles for a safety critical intervention, or do you think it's more in the thousands range? Why do you think it's going to take some time, just a few months rather than several years to get to Robotaxi level capability?
I think we have a lot of exponential growth, one in the training area. With Cortex coming online in Texas, our compute has increased significantly. I think there was a guy this weekend, Brian, I forget his name, made an incredible point about us potentially being able to pick up the H100s from XAI in Memphis in a few months when they onboard the H200s, which would also increase our compute by an additional, I think, 2/3. So from a compute standpoint, we're exponentially growing. Our fleet size is huge, so we've got more and more data to work with. But this is this ties in to something I was trying to say a moment ago. When you what do you look at right now? And here's what I look at: is why would they be building the rideshare app right now and testing rides in California if they didn't think they were close? Compared to your point about 5 to 10 years, right? Why would they make the investment right now to build this app and have it ready to go? Those are the things that I think are important rather than the FSD tracker and the stats.
Well, it's not much of an investment. It's only a few $1 million to do those things. So it's a drop in the bucket for Tesla. It doesn't mean much.
It's a timing thing.
Let me ask you something. So you said that they're building. They can be borrowing H100s from XAI in the future. Tesla can borrow XAI H100s. and that's going to lead to a really big jump in training capacity. What is Tesla's current training capacity? Do you know? H100 equivalent.
Yeah, are we nearing 100,000 H100 equivalents with Dojo?
Okay. And why do you think that number will be enough?
Do you know the number, Yeoman?
Yeah, a little less than 90,000. And as of September, it was 65,000.
Yeah, there's no way I would know, right? Only Tesla knows whether it's enough, and nobody could argue it's not enough either, for the same reason.
Well, that's exactly what I'm arguing.
Oh,
Right.
go ahead and explain that.
Well, I've said it many times, but I'll say it again for you. I think currently FSD, based on my conversations, based on FSD tracker, based on my own experience with the software, is at about 99% reliability when it comes to safety critical interventions. Okay, so basically an intervention to prevent a very likely accident. And my understanding is at about hundreds of miles per critical intervention. All right, and I think that's going to have to be 99.9999% reliable. So 6 nines from 2 9. And my understanding of a rule of thumb in training models is that you need 10 times the training capacity, or let's say training time, to have the error rate. So to go from 99% reliability to 99.5% reliability, you're going to train the same model 10 times more with 10 times more data. And you can, take other actions, like you can increase the model size, which obviously necessitates as similar increase capability on the inference side as well. That's why you go from hardware 3 to hardware 4, and Tesla's talking about 3 times bigger models. So that's one lever you can pull to reduce that training time increase that you're going to need to achieve that in 6 nines. Because otherwise, you're going to need literally a million times more training capacity if you don't do any of these changes. So going from hardware 3 to hardware 4 reduces it somewhat. You have your model size increase. You're also going to need that much more data to train that larger model. But that's only 3 times. And you're working towards 1 million times. So you're going to have to go to hardware 5, hardware 6, hardware 7, and who knows how capable they're going to be. And just because maybe management says this hardware is going to be 3 times more capable than the last one, that also doesn't mean much on the surface either. Like, for example, can you say something like MacBook Pro is 3 times more capable than MacBook Air? Well, for what purpose? You may have 3 times the CPU, but does it have the 3 times memory? Does it have 3 times the GPU? How do these various specs act on various uses of the laptop, like if you're doing just browsing versus playing video, etc. So I think you have to consider the fact that management has been over optimistic over the last decade when it comes to FSD, when you're considering these statements. So if I hear something like 3 times more capable, it's probably at best 3 times more capable, and it's probably less capable than that. So a lot of these things, and the other mistake I made last year, the year before, was I thought that maybe if Tesla is collecting 10 times more data because the fleet is getting larger and FSD is now in wide release, maybe people will use it more, etc. Let's say you're getting 10 times more data, and you're also increasing your training capacity by 10 times from 10,000 to 100,000 H100 equivalent GPUs, that they would stack up, that you would get 100 times improvement in model performance. But that was wrong, because it sounds like these things need to improve in parallel. So to train a 10 times bigger model, you're going to need 10 times more data, and you're going to have to do it on 10 times more training compute capacity. So that obviously changes the whole understanding as well. And so if you kind of do all of these things and make an assumption about which hardware is going to achieve it first, hardware 4, hardware 5, hardware 6, and make assumptions around how much more improvement you're getting on the inference side from each one of those, and then make some assumptions about H100 versus GB200, like the Blackwell coming to market next, and make some assumptions around training compute pricing will also decline over time. So a lot of assumptions go into it, but I think absent a technological breakthrough, like algorithmic breakthrough, just like transformers really accelerated things to another like a step change, which came out of Google. Absent something like that, which I don't see in the near future, and I have my eye out, it's going to take at best 5 years, but probably more like 10 years to get there. Now, this doesn't mean Tesla cannot introduce FSD unsupervised or robotaxis in limited geographies like Austin downtown, San Francisco around Omar's block, or LA around SpaceX. I don't know. But even in that, so that's another lever they can pull, which is operational domain. They can limit it, just like they did at the We Robot event. They spent a few months with a bunch of engineers, and they allocated some training compute to basically improve the reliability of the software in that specific area, to demo the service. But even then, they pulled another lever. They limited the service that was kind of driving people around to 5 miles an hour. I mean, who the fuck is going to drive in a robotaxi that drives 5 miles an hour? And that's the same thing we saw from Waymo or Cruise. Like, I drove in a bunch of Cruise vehicles in Austin, and they were going like 20, 25 miles an hour on a very determined road. It was basically like a bus route. Waymo is doing better, but they're also limited, and they're growing very gradually. And they're going to need billions of dollars and many years to go nationwide as well. So, all of these things combined, absent that algorithmic breakthrough, I just don't see how it can happen sooner than 5 years. But I hope that they prove me wrong. That's the whole another aspect of this thing, is that I hope I'm wrong, because if Tesla gets there in the near future, they're going to be saving countless lives. They're going to save an economy, countless billions of dollars of damage, and economic growth will accelerate. And it's going to be one of the first major applications that actually improves people's lives dramatically due to AI. I hope they do it, sooner. I mean, it would take me a second to close out my short position, So I'm not here to spread FUD or anything like that. And but this is my honest opinion. I just don't see how it can happen in the next 5 years. Wes?
Yeah, I appreciate all the detail that you provided. I just don't look at it the same way, meaning I don't build my thesis on the foundation of FSD tracker. Admittedly, a little bit of anecdotal. I do, consider how it's performing on my vehicles and other people. But the bottom line is, I just don't believe that I'm in a position to really make a judgment. But regarding the technical growth here, it's out of my control and out of my purview. But here's what I can see. And look, here's how I think of this: is that if I work at Tesla, I have to look at the competitive playing field. My job is to monetize this as quickly as possible, but only if we're able to scale to get maximum monetization. So 3 years ago, 4 years ago, we didn't have a lot of competitors, or what it didn't appear, at least, we had a lot of competitors. And people argue Waymo is really not in a strong position right now. I would disagree with that. I think what's happening right now is we got about 12 months before it's game on. And Waymo is going to drop lidar and radar, and it's going to be vision only, but they're not telling us, is my guess. Because they want to keep us guessing, but they have to drop those sensors. If they do, and they're able to scale, we might be looking at a situation in a few months where Uber and Waymo are teaming up, as they already say they are, with a vision-only approach. And so we have to get, as far as Tesla's concerned, we have to get in and get this whole thing stood up and running fast. We don't have 5 or 10 years to play with. Other people will get there sooner. So that's what I think is happening. But we have the technical lead. We have the technical advantage. Google's an incredible competitor, perhaps, and I'm hoping that the path they've been on with the 3 sensors rather than 1, hopefully that's slowed them down enough where we can take the lead. But we've got to get this thing up and running by next year or 2026 at the latest.
Okay, Mario, then Lucia.
Hey, Yaman. Thank you for the thoughtful, complete explanation of your thinking on this. As you know, I haven't spoken to you in a long time, but long-term Tesla bull, all-in Tesla investor. I'm not a trader, so I'm just happy to sit tight and see how this thing plays out. What chance do you give that Tesla will do a Waymo model where they'll have driver monitoring and interventions on the Tesla vehicles when they do roll out, whenever that is?
Sorry, can you? So you said what chance that
Yeah,
Tesla's
do
gonna
you
have
apply in your
teleoperators?
in your thinking and in your model, do you just discount that that's not going to happen in your thinking, or do you give it a probability that they will have drivers ready to intervene on the Teslas, just like the Waymos?
I mean, they started hiring, right, teleoperators, but I don't know how scalable that is. Like that's, I've actually been in a situation, and I posted about this too, where a cruise vehicle in Austin, I was in the back seat, just myself, actually with a friend of mine, I think, and we were going downhill, and I posted this video on X. We were going downhill on a 3 lane road, and a bunch of cars, approaching from behind. The vehicle just stopped in the middle of the freaking road, and this is not some side street. The speed limit is like 30 miles, 35 miles an hour, and the cruise just fucking stopped. So we kind of called. There's a button you push, and you called home, I guess. And then this guy comes on, and what's the problem? I'm like, we're fucking stopped in the middle of the road. And then he intervened, and there was a huge latency when he was trying to steer the vehicle. Now, I don't know. I've never been in a Waymo. Maybe Omar can talk to that in his space, how it is on Waymo. But I mean, the guy couldn't drive the vehicle. It was like, just imagine you're trying to drive from the back seat, looking at the camera, I guess. And he kind of like tried to get into the left turning lane, but then hit the curb. That was like the divider between the 2 sides of the road. So this is a road like with 3 lanes on each side, and then he like fucking started backing up into oncoming traffic. I'm like, this is ridiculous. So I don't know if Tesla has a better way of doing it, but if that's what you're relying on, then it's never going to scale. You're going to have to be limited to super safe areas. You're going to have to go in like a very limited speeds. And because your latency is going to be huge. Like over this, whatever your connection you're using, whether it's cell phone or whatever, obviously there's going to be latency. And in a safety critical situation, you can't rely on that. And I don't think it's scalable. But maybe they'll have to start that way. I don't know. That's what Waymo and Cruise is. So Mario, then Wessex.
Yeah, thanks for that. I don't know myself, but I would think there will be at least some period where they'll be doing some teleoperating and some takeover, and they definitely will have to solve the latency problem. And it seems like to me Waymo has solved it, and Yeah, I'm hoping we're going to see this operational in a year, but a lot of variables here, and it's a very interesting question. And I applaud your courage, Yaman.
Thanks. Let's go to Lucia because Lucia has his hand up for a while. Lucia?
No, well, I was referring to the comment to Wes that he is in for the long run and he doesn't believe Tesla can fail. But as Yaman said, there are like 30 different reasons why Tesla might fail, and there is also black swan events. Like there are many reasons for which you should not take for granted the fact that Tesla will succeed.
Yeah. Just a couple of comments in YouTube Live. Sorry, Wessex, give me 1 second. I kind of ignored YouTube Live for a little bit, but Bing Guo says, I hope you're wrong and I hope you lose money. Okay. Dan B says, Yaman, you are short in the immediate term, but bullish long term, correct? And yes, I mean, I think the immediate term obviously is a relative term, but I would say maybe the next few months I'll probably stay short. And then I think like beyond the next few years, I think there's a macroeconomic risk as well that I've mentioned many times here. So if a recession happens and everything goes down, then I would, of course, take chips off the table or even go long, who knows. But I want to be able to do both. I want to be able to be a good investor on the long side, on the short side, in the near term, in the longer term, in different industries. So I have a portfolio of short stocks. So like today, for example, Tesla is up, but every other stock I shorted that I shared with everyone is down. So the portfolio is actually up on the short side. So, okay, Wessex.
Yeah, just Lucia, I never said that they can't fail. I just want to point that out. Also, Mario, I agree with your comments. Look, it really doesn't matter how they iterate. It doesn't matter if they do teleoperations, they do it on a small street during beautiful weather. It doesn't matter. What does matter is progress. And then we iterate quickly to our end goal. So I don't care what they do. Now, people look at SpaceX and blowing up, some of the starships along the way. They're like, oh no, that's a real failure. No, that's iteration. So I think we'll get a lot of bad press because of a small area. We'll have some bears that'll complain about teleoperations. But I was in California, and the vehicle I was in turned the wrong way. They had to stop it, and there was a teleoperator that operated our vehicle and backed it up. And I thought it was pretty cool. I thought it was really interesting. And look, yeah, why wouldn't we have that, right?
Okay, Dr. Coco Banana in YouTube Live Chat says, Yaman is only long Machine's mom. And that's correct. Learn code.
Hey, regards to the latency, could Starlink be used? Isn't that one of the benefits, low latency?
Yeah, and I think I said in 2019, I don't think publicly, but I shared with a group of DM, what was the name? A Discord group, that I think that Tesla may wait until Starlink is built. So maybe that will be the actual case. But even then, you have latency. Like it's not like there's no latency.
True.
Go ahead. Wessex.
Lauren, what were you referring to? What operations are referring to where latency may or may not be a concern?
Sorry, say it again.
I was wondering about the question that Learn asked. Are we talking about FSD performing with latency, or what are we talking about?
Yeah, like let's say you have to, you're going like, Elias just posted if it's to run through a red light. But let's say you're about to get into an accident that you have to take immediate action, and you can't rely on some human intervention. That the customer will phone home and somebody will come in, or even the situation I described. This car just stops in the middle of the road with oncoming traffic, and you can't rely on some teleoperation to save you from that before you roll out of service. That's what Cruise did, and Cruise got into a lot of trouble. I'm not saying that's going to happen to Waymo or Tesla or whatever, but that's a high risk you're taking. Like, why even take that risk? If the owners of the cars aren't using FSD, even if you do a free trial. That makes no sense to do. So I would be surprised if Tesla tried to scale some teleoperation service. Hustletown, did you have anything to say?
Yeah, we just got back from the terrific Lady Day morning. I just wanted to say I've been dipping in and out of the space. Brave Bulls coming in there to battle Yaman. Yaman's pretty solid with his thesis. It's not gonna change my mind, but it's good to hear it. And it, other than Gordon Johnson, this might be one of the better bear arguments that I've heard in recent months. So FS13, full self-driving version 13. I'm captivated like everyone else. I haven't experienced it yet, but the fact that we're seeing 3-point turns and things of that nature, it's tough to be bearish with this lined up. Just want to say I've been listening, and
Yeah,
I'm in this space as
well,
well.
let me ask people on the board right now. Everyone on the board. If you knew for a fact that the stock was going to have, so you did some time traveling, you looked up the newspaper, and you knew in the next 12 months the stock is going to have, would you sell your stock and then buy back at a lower price? So let's start with Mario.
Of course, yes.
Okay, with 6.
No, absolutely not.
Why not?
Well, the biggest mistake I've ever made was in March of 2020. I thought I was really smart when COVID was happening. We had a pandemic, and I sold a lot of my shares. I was already building my war chest. I had a big war chest built. And in that second, anyways, I've had to recover from that. And I'll never sell again for any reason until I'm getting out. And by the way, with Luce laughing, and by the way, Luce, if you want to talk about it with me, go ahead. The point was, if it's going to be cut in half, well, maybe the next day it doubles. Am I a dumbass because I sold my shares and then I got my face ripped off the next day? Come on.
Well, we're doing a hypothetical, which is if you knew for certain, right? So I'm trying to understand if there's another reason why you wouldn't sell. But it sounds like you're kind of going off of an event that happened in the past where you thought something was going to happen and it didn't. So that's not really analogous to what I'm trying to. Right.
Well, what I don't know for certain is if it's going to double the next day, right? You just said it was going to half. So
yeah. Luce, or actually, we know what Luce would do because he did it already. Hustletown, how about you?
I'm not touching the stock, but if I knew it was going to half, like say tomorrow, I would definitely sell all my call options and hold that in the chest. But as far as stock goes, I'll leave it alone.
Okay, so now the next question before I go to Mario is: would you short it if you knew for a fact it's going to go down 50%? Mario?
Yeah, I think I've just heard the most retarded answers ever. Of course, I would short it if I knew, if I had the newspaper for a couple of months from now and I knew what the stock price was. Of course, I would.
Okay, West 6.
I don't know. I'd have to understand what Mario's point. I'm sorry. Did you say my point was retarded?
Yeah, I think any
Yes.
point, if you know for a fact, I mean, he's just giving us a hypothetical here, right? If I know what the stock price is going to be, yes, I'm not even a trader, but I would certainly trade on it if I had that information. That's very valuable information. And, I'd lever up if I knew for certain what the stock would be. I'd take all the leverage I could and I would,
Yeah.
Go in, that's the only logical thing to do.
Yeah. 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 I mean,
You
somebody
know
may
how
have
long
it.
it's going to be down?
I
Yeah.
know. Come on. Jesus.
Yeah, exactly. Let's say, like I
All
said,
I need is
if
one
you
day.
time traveled.
One
Yeah, but he
day
didn't
to
say
go
which
after
day,
one day.
Mario. He didn't say which day.
If I gave you a
Okay.
map of the stock market for the next 12 months of every stock and the tick, would you then do it? Yeah. Anyway.
Of course.
Okay, let's talk some more substantive stuff. Lucia, go ahead.
So one of the biggest mistake smart people do is that even if they are right, and by chances what they do is wrong, they might learn that what they did is wrong, but instead they were right and just was up to chances. So Wes, maybe you were right.
At which point?
When you solved.
Okay. Anything else on Tesla? So I see Machine in the crowd. If he wants to come up for a few minutes before we wrap up, he's welcome to do so. We talked about Cybertruck lease price cuts. We talked about V13. I think it's too early to tell. You know, Wes, the other thing about Wes 6, the other thing about Tesla FSD tracker, I think the graphs with confidence intervals is valuable. Confidence intervals, of course, take into account the size of the sample as well as the variance in the data. So, and I was the one who recommended Elias to start doing trimmed means. If I were him, I would do 20% trimmed, but he did 10%, which is also fine. And he's getting some, false accusations around trimmed means, as if he intentionally trimmed out, excluded bullish data. But these are obviously coming from people who don't understand statistics. What a trimmed mean means that you take out both the top 10% and the bottom 10% to improve the variance and maybe standard deviation and the reliability of the data, which I think is a great call, really necessary to do. And Elias is doing more than 100% what I would have expected to do given the limited data that he has. And if people were genuine about tracking FSD performance, they would encourage others to enter data into Tesla FSD tracker. So if somebody is trying to dismiss and shame Elias's work and reduce his credibility, it's only because they don't want that data to be seen. It's not because of the shortcomings of the tracker. It's because they have harmful intentions. If they were genuine, they would ask, they can easily, there are people with hundreds of thousands of followers. They can easily ask a few thousand of their followers, get a few thousand of their followers to enter data, but they choose not to do that because they are afraid of what this tracker is going to show, which is a shame. ACDC.
Hi, Aman. I just wanted to share something else. And kind of like get some feedback from some of the speakers here. I had a trip yesterday. I went to drop my son back to college, which is from Chicago to Iowa, 3-hour trip. So it's a 6-hour round trip. I always stop by at this one charger, which is half an hour outside of Iowa City. It's usually never a problem. It's a big truck stop. There's 8 stalls. Only 1 to 2 of them are ever occupied. But yesterday I stopped by there and all 8 of them were occupied. So it's the busy return traffic of from Thanksgiving weekend. And all 8 of them were occupied. I volunteered to give my spot to this other guy, a young guy with a young family who was making his 3rd stop coming from Omaha, driving to South Bend. Okay, I felt really bad for him. He had some very young kids who were kind of all over the place. And then I got another spot after like 15 minutes or so. I was down to like 3% on my battery, so it was a little desperate on my side too. But then when I got in there, all the stalls charging was reduced because there was a heavy load from all 8 stalls being taken. Okay, one of the stalls in the corner was taken by a Mustang Mach-E, which had another F-150 Lightning waiting right behind him to get out to come back into the stall. Okay, so to me, how is this problem or how is this scenario good for EV adoption? I can kind of deal with it. I like driving my Tesla, so it's not a bad thing. I did the trip. I like the FSD performance and the ease of using that. But this guy with his young family, he was distraught, and it was his first road trip ever, right? I'm not sure if he's ever going to take one again in an EV, especially not over a crowded weekend like this. But how can something like this be solved? And that's kind of like what I'm looking for. I don't think Tesla can build more chargers around there because on a usual time frame, there's only 1 or 2 stalls that are needed. But what about crowded times such as this? And also, it was 15 degrees, so the weather was cold, the battery consumption was high, so that was also leading into it. So anybody's take on like how something like this can be resolved for EVs and long road trips?
Let's go to machine. Machine.
Absolutely. Well, first let me answer another question, and then I'll answer that one. The trim mean topic. I think people don't understand statistics. I agree with Yaman. In fact, what's funny is a lot of people are very comfortable using the median. Meanwhile, the median is actually a trimmed mean at 50%.
Exactly.
So what is with
Exactly.
people
I mean, this
liking
is
the mean?
this is a fucking joke.
It's
Like
really embarrassing.
99% of the bullshit that's out there about this FSD tracker, all these accusations, to anybody who knows statistics, is absolute comical. It's a comedy.
I agree.
And but it is what it is.
And speaking of trimmed mean, I think when you talk about these road trips and charging with families and their little kids, the really only solution is a trimmed Vans deference. See if anyone got that joke.
Yeah, I didn't get the joke. Machine, can you repeat that last part?
Snip, snip.
Yeah, I have no idea. But the thing is, like, Machine agrees with me. And that's despite years of me offending his mom and him offending my mom. So the fact that we agree is even more valuable information than two people agreeing on community notes. Okay. Wessex?
ACDC, were you at a V2 charger with a cap of 150 kilowatts, or were you at a V3?
It was a V3 that charges at 250, and I've charged there many times, and it was capping everybody. I think to start off was like 120 itself.
Somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think V3, I know V2 does share the box across 4. I don't know if V2.
Okay.
Well,
Let's,
can you help with that, Yaman?
I actually
cut me
would
off?
rather talk about FSD. We have a good group of people right now with Machine and Wes. And Machine, any other thoughts around FSD tracker?
Not really. There's nothing new. People just whining that it doesn't show them what they want.
I mean, the other thing is, like, people complain about it not having enough sample size, and their solution to it is to reduce the sample size even lower by focusing on dot update. I'm like, you are a fucking joke.
There's a lot of curve fitting going on.
Yeah,
in these
exactly.
analyses.
Exactly. All right. So, have you seen V13 videos yet?
Just a little. I've been busy working, unlike you. I did see the release notes.
Yeah, what'd you think?
I think I'm not trying to toot my own horn, but things are going as expected in that Tesla's making great progress. This is an amazing software. However, the trend is bigger models, more complicated software, and I predicted V13 would be another model size increase, which it isn't yet officially, right? It's going to be one of the next releases. And that's the biggest predictor of performance increase, is having larger models, and they're doing a better job distilling them and all that. But there's still a trend toward bigger models. And I'll be curious to see where exactly they have to go to get to the fidelity needed and reliability needed for robotaxis. We're already 15x higher than we were with 12.3. And where are we going to be next year? Where does Tesla want to go? And when they have AI 5, hardware 5 in their sights and what it can use, are they going to start salivating saying, oh man, I can't wait because we can even increase the model size 10x further? I predict they will.
Okay, great. Wes, welcome. How are you?
Hey, good. Hopefully you can hear me okay.
Yeah, we can hear you. Machine, somebody in YouTube live chat asked, they said they've seen you out. They think they saw you around. So have you been running today?
Not today. Actually, I tweaked my calf, so I was just spinning on the bike.
Do you need a massage?
Depends. Who and where?
You should get some if you need a massage. All right, Wes, what did you think of V13 video so far?
The feature ads are great, and I haven't seen any real regressions yet, so all things good so far.
Do you think, from a features wise, so obviously it's not feature complete at this point, but is this kind of in line with what you expected? They have a section about upcoming improvements. Did you expect that to happen?
Yeah, I think it's interesting that they're doing that. It's almost like they're essentially putting their roadmap, in the release notes, which is both good and bad. I think the good part is that it's good to see that they're planning these things out and they're confident enough that they can talk about them in the release notes. And then the bad part is, though, it's like, just I would go ahead and do it, go things, as opposed to, I don't know, it's good and bad. I do like the idea that they're increasing the context length window. The model size is great. The fact that they can do that on hardware 4 is still it's a really good sign that hardware 4 still has enough headroom to accommodate those things, because they're not necessarily talking about that those are needed to support feature complete. So I'm hearing a little bit of background noise, so I'm not sure if you're hearing me.
Yeah, we hear you. We hear you fine. It's not 100%, but we can hear you.
Yeah, I'm more concerned about feature complete. I've said this many times, because that enables me to know that it's going to run on a given hardware. Because after you finish feature complete, then you start to run performance optimizations, and you can do a lot more with the same amount of compute when you go through that process.
Now, feature complete, like for example, tomorrow Tesla released a update to hardware 4 vehicles and it's feature complete, but has 99% reliability when it comes to safety critical interventions. That doesn't mean that hardware can run a model that is 99.9999% reliable. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's not definitive either way. So the idea is that with a given amount of compute, you can, over time, you can do a lot more with performance optimizations. And that's where the increase in model size comes in. So I would focus on feature complete, and then I would start to increase reliability through model size increases and other, optimizations towards reliability.
Machine, any thoughts on that so far?
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I'm just curious if you think Tesla's strategy are they preemptively increasing model size, even though maybe they don't need it right now, just to fix all the problems associated with how they're optimizing that to even fit that model size on hardware 4, and then focus on feature complete. Is that what you think they're doing? Like, are they preemptively increasing model size, or do you think they need to increase model size right now?
Yeah, that's a great question, because it's unknown. They could need to. You're totally right. They could need to. So there is a possibility. I think the probability is low. However, the reason I think so is that they continue to lower the control loop time, which I think is very bullish for having enough memory and compute power while adding features. So the fact that they're already going through that different development paths, I think is pretty bullish. This complete rewrite, though, and I saw that posted from, I'll probably butcher his name. I think it's Yuan. That tells me that maybe it's less of a complete rewrite for the model and more of a complete rewrite for the ingestion process and the pre-processing that you have to do, because now they're taking in these full frame, AI4 level videos. And so I take it more on that side. And granted, maybe they'll talk about this in detail at some point. I'm happy to be proven wrong, but that's just my guess. So I still feel like they don't need to increase the model size to get to feature complete. Some of the features that they're missing are just, they seem, kind of innocuous in many ways, like the active school zone. It clearly visualizes it, correctly. So I don't see what the issue is that they're waiting to implement that feature. Maybe it is in 13.2 and I just haven't seen it yet. There you go.
Okay. Moshe, anything to add on that?
No, that was pretty good.
Okay. Wes, there was a bit of a concern around NVIDIA's next generation chips overheating. There's also a rumor that Microsoft reduced its orders by 40%, and maybe we'll wait for the next one. NVIDIA running into technical issues like that, does that give you a pause about your timeline to FSD unsupervised and robotaxis? Wes? Can you guys hear me?
Sorry, you dropped out. Could you repeat that?
NVIDIA recently ran into issues about overheating of its Blackwell GB200 chips. Microsoft reduced orders by 40% of the chip, and looks like the production is delayed a little bit. Does the potential of such issues on the NVIDIA side, would that delay Tesla's development of FSD?
Potentially, but this overheating, I'd have to know more details. So I've been through so many revisions of NVIDIA, their highest performance data center chips, with really bad issues, that's not uncommon. So they go through and they fix a ton of potentially really egregious issues along the way. One of them can be overheating, where they're not sending the right amount of cooling instructions to the right chips, and they're not doing it fast enough, and the process is just too latent. That's a issue that I've seen in the past. Another has been overclocking too long certain chips, and then they don't get enough cooling. So that these issues are not reminiscent of a lower level problem with the chip itself. It's more of the entire system needs to be in balance. So I hope that helps. But if I get more details, I can talk about it in detail.
Okay, sure. X-Men Live, go ahead.
I wanted to back up to the teleop just for a second. So on the teleop, I think the critical thing to understand is you don't necessarily have to 100% go manual when you teleop. You can definitely be running a series of macros. So, and I do think that was happening during the robotics event. They would say, play blackjack, get a glass. They were in teleop, but they were just issuing a command, and then it ran a sequence of things, much like I think they could do with a car. They would just issue a U-turn, a left turn. They would not manually drive all those things. There's too much sensory. Most of the time, all you need is a throttle bump, some kind of assurance it's okay. So I don't think teleop is as critical as you're thinking it is. When I was in robotics, we used teleop and macros all the time to help the students drive those robots more efficiently. So
Okay.
anyways.
Machine, do you think Tesla will be using teleoperators for robotaxis?
Sorry, cooking. I think in some form they will, like Waymo. It's just a safe way to reduce edge cases. You may have to design the system around you using it, but I think they will, at least in some form.
Wes?
Yeah, I do, but there's different levels of teleoperation. So one could be a very simple, like just kind of send a very basic command, proceed, it's safe to proceed. And then it can start executing more inference controls and planning, just kind of getting it over the hump, and then letting it do kind of its own thing. Another could be it encounters some situation it has no idea what to do. And then you can send all of these controls essentially over the internet, over IP, and not like over the CAN bus, which is what Cruise does. So I feel like, that's something that they honestly, they have to implement, or else they're going to send it. They're going to have to roll a vehicle and a human out there to kind of take over. But I feel like this is not something that is difficult to implement. These safety critical controls are already inherently built into the vehicle through the autopilot ECU. So I feel like this is a fairly simple and easy thing to implement. Not only that, but clearly they've implemented it on Optimus in a very tight control loop, because they demonstrated the Optimus catching that ball. We're talking about a sub 10 millisecond control loop. So I'm pretty confident this is something that they'll have.
Okay, thank you. Anything else on FSD, robotaxis, Optimus? All right, machine stock price wise, are you taking any positions?
Nope. Nothing with Tesla right now.
Nothing Tesla. Okay. By the way, for those of you who just joined us, I highly recommend watching the song written by me / ChatGPT and music by Brandon. It's a lot of fun. Anyway, all right, Wes, NVIDIA. Like I said earlier, Microsoft, the rumors that Microsoft reduced its orders for GB200 for 40%. And let me just read you the exact thing so I'm not misleading here. As demand for AI continues to surge, the industry's appetite for high-performance computing chips has grown increasingly intense. According to a report by Commercial Times, NVIDIA's next-gen Blackwell architecture chip, GB200, has encountered new technical hurdles in its mass production plans. In response, CSP provider Microsoft is reportedly scaling back its orders. Sources with the supply chain cited by Commercial Times reveal that the issue lies in the backplane connection design. The testing yield for cartridge connectors provided by U.S. Tier 1 supplier Amphenol has been suboptimal, potentially delaying mass production until March 2025. The GB200 chips employ TSMC's cutting-edge COWSL advanced packaging technology, incorporating a highly complex cabinet design. However, this complexity has led to various challenges, including overheating in chip design, leakage issues in UQDs, and now insufficient yield rates for copper cables. While NVIDIA announced during its recent earnings call that Blackwell production is fully underway, supply constraints remain a pressing issue that the company is working to resolve with its partners. The same report, citing supply chain resources, attributes the issue to a newly developed cartridge connector module. The significant specification upgrade of the GB200 has increased production complexity, resulting in poor yield rates and failed testing, creating a major bottleneck. NVIDIA is actively seeking alternative suppliers, but issues such as patent restrictions and capacity ramp-up delays are expected to prolong resolution efforts. While the report notes that the chip production schedules remain unaffected, supply chain checks indicate that Microsoft has already cut its orders for NVIDIA by 40%, reallocating some of the GB300 chips set for release in mid-2025. What do you think, Wes?
So that's interesting. So there's a lot of interesting tidbits there. One of them is talking about the networking backbone with new connectors, cables, and chips, networking chips that control the networking backbone. So that's just part of the Blackwell infrastructure. Doesn't necessarily mean it's the Blackwell chip itself. Cooling is also applied to these networking chips. They get super hot because they run at a much, much higher gigabit rate than typically the ASICs do, or the tensor cores do inside of the NVIDIA Blackwell chip architecture. So that could definitely be something that is chip level, but on the networking side. But I'm still not hearing anything about the Blackwell chip itself overheating. There was a lot of fancy wording in there, but it didn't really speak to that definitively. On the Microsoft side, they could easily be holding back or wanting to move to the next iteration, because if they placed an order and they don't take it, they still have to pay for a percentage of those chips, believe it or not. But if they move their order to the next iteration, then they're not going to lose out on that buy, and they won't lose their place in line. So that's something that cloud providers have done in the past. The other thing that I think to be aware of is that these data centers are very difficult to build out. So Microsoft may have had one of their data centers be pushed out because of development issues. So I still don't see an issue with the Blackwell chip itself. That we would hear from Jensen if yield rates were low on the chip itself, then that would be interesting and novel for the actual architecture, like an architecture problem. The thing to listen for if he were to say anything or anybody were to say anything is if there's a metal layer problem or if there's an issue with the lower level firmware that they can't fix and require a metal layer change. That would be, kind of like an architecture rewrite, and that'd be a big deal. But outside of that, I'm not seeing a real big problem with Blackwell itself. Hope that helps.
It does. Thank you. Mario, then Wessex.
I think one thing we may be ignoring is that big news that Elon locked in 1.1 billion of the Blackwells, and he's getting the first deliveries. And Microsoft may be posturing a little bit here and doing a political move to say, hey, cancel my order if you're letting Elon jump in front of Microsoft here.
Okay, Wessex.
Hey, Wes. Brian Wong made some interesting predictions this weekend. And one of them was that XAI's B200s that are coming in, XAI may allow Tesla to use the H100s that they're currently using. Are those, and maybe just help me understand how this would work. Are those two incompatible if they were to, if XAI was to continue to use both the H100s and the B200s? Would they be building separate models, or are these things able to work together and just there's no real actual point here?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's not easy to make them all work in concert. They have to be all localized on the same kind of like inner ring of networking. They can't be connected over the, like IP over the internet. That is too low latency. We're talking about like nanoseconds that these things communicate in, very, very high, like I just explained with the networking chips. It's a very, very high gigabit rate that they communicate at. So it makes it very difficult. And then these chips are clocked differently. So you more than likely have to clock down the new chips to communicate effectively with the old chips and also tweak your infrastructure. Oh, rats. Did I lose you?
I hear you.
Okay. I'm not sure what you heard or didn't heard, but it's not a slam dunk that you'd do that. Maybe that's the short version.
I thank you, Wessex.
Yeah, just to follow up on that. So are you would a scenario possibly work where XAI could allow Tesla to use the H100s in Memphis, and basically include them with their H100s back in Texas?
Yeah, they could totally use them. It depends on how large that cluster is. That's basically determines like how much of a model you can run. And if it's not compatible and their infrastructure isn't set up to effectively run their model and their code, because that could be incompatible too, but I would hope that they're using something similar. So it's not a slam dunk and it's not free, but it could be a way to accelerate things if they have different models that they want to train. And that, that data or that compute is going to sit idle anyway. You might as well run it. That's what I do.
Wessex.
So Wes, do you see a scenario where if you're XAI, where you kind of want to ditch the H100s, optimize for the B200s, and basically if you have someone that would buy them use them like Tesla, do you see that as a viable scenario?
I don't see why. Granted, maybe XAI has like a much larger, newer cluster to play with, and so they don't want to use the old thing. They want to use the new shiny thing. Great. If they can run bigger models and they don't have anything like kind of queued up that they want to train, then fine. But typically it's not like that. So like at Google with TPUs, like we always had a very long queue and we'd prioritize it, of things that we wanted to run. And that wasn't something that was in, like there wasn't like a bunch of idle compute laying around. It was always being used. So I don't see that being a distinct possibility. Maybe Tesla has higher priority stuff that XAI is willing to essentially like quote, sell them compute, for a certain amount of time. But again, it's not free, and there's more than likely a queue at XAI. So it would have to be a priority and it would have to be a cost thing.
All right. Any other questions, comments? Wes, are you buying shares in NVIDIA, holding onto your shares, or did you reduce some of your holdings?
No, I'm just holding. I still think it's a 2 to 5 year runway of kind of like same old until AGI is not only met, but we reach some plateauing of kind of like that intelligence growth need being saturated or satiated. So there you go. That's my short answer.
Okay. What if, hypothetically speaking, Microsoft slashed orders of 40%, not because of these delays, but because they just don't think they need more chips?
Yeah, let's say let's say that was true. What we would see from them is we would see them in the lead of AI compute. So they would have the best and brightest model. They would be winning all of the benchmarks. They would have their products outlined and well formed. They'd be making an incredible amount of money and increasing that every quarter with this kind of AI product sell. And they would sell into many different categories. So they'd be essentially dominating enterprise. I don't see that happening. So I don't think that's the case.
Well, say, for example, that these companies like Microsoft, Meta, and others, Amazon, have to make 5-10 years of investments into GPUs before they can see material progress in their profits. Okay. And in the meantime, you have an economic situation where the Fed is still restrictive, although they're starting to lower rates a little bit. And your budget deficit in on the government side, fiscal side, is high. And maybe they'll be able to reduce it, or maybe they won't. So for economic reasons, the stock market goes downward, and Microsoft stock goes down by 30, 40, 50%. In that scenario, wouldn't they take a pause in CapEx spending because they know they're going to have to, they're going to need another 5-10 years to get to the profitability levels that you're talking about?
In that scenario, I could see them reducing their AI spend potentially, but realize if they do that, then their AI researchers are going to think that they're not all in and they're going to bail very quickly and they're going to lose their talent. They really don't want to lose that talent because then it's essentially over. You can't really get that talent back because that AI pipeline that you're building and that spend, that's something that it takes years to build up. And if you take your foot off of the pedal and you stop that massive acceleration, you're going to signal to your workforce that you're not in it to win it, and they're going to go to other companies. So I don't see that happening either. You're all in at this point, whether you create AGI or not. You're all in so that when it does happen, you can license it and then continue to build on top of whatever state of the art is. So that's my take.
Okay, so you're saying even if there was a recession, Microsoft would probably continue to spend at a higher rate because they don't want to lose the employees. They don't want to signal to the market or to their employees or their customers that they're not in it to win it.
Yeah, they'd cut other things first. I can see them cutting other lower level programs that don't have as much opportunity. It will be a really interesting thing if one company does just kind of stand up in their earnings call and go, look, we're cutting our AI spend because we're just not seeing, short or long-term profitability on the horizon. That would be a big deal if that happens. But again, I'm not seeing that happen. There's been talk of AI plateauing, but I'm also not seeing that. I'm seeing all of the benchmarks, on a weekly basis get beaten. And it's not we have an infinite amount of intelligence left to create. These things are already better than any PhD in their respective fields. So I'm not seeing that slowing down. So anyway, it would be a huge surprise.
Okay, give me 1 second, okay? Give me 1 second.
Yeah, sure.
I'm trying to just make sure something's correct before I ask a question. So I have low confidence in the numbers here, okay? I have to look into this some more. But according to macro trends, so this is a third-party aggregator of company financial data, and maybe ACDC can check it because I think he would have the resources to do this. Microsoft's cash balance, cash and cash equivalents have been declining quite a bit in recent years. ACDC, can you confirm that for me?
I can give you a second.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, real quick. So you're saying that Microsoft is spending more than it's making?
So all I'm saying at this point is that their cash balance has been declining according to macro trends. So, and I don't even know if this is true. I would have to dig into their financial statements. Like, for example, one thing they can be doing is like Apple. They may be using cash to buy some long-term assets, so that would be shown on a different part of the asset side of the balance sheet. So that's possible. But I have talked in this space about a year ago that Microsoft's free cash flow has been stable over the last year or two, which is also interesting. You would expect these companies to be growing, but they're so big and they're spending so much that it's not that surprising, right? It's definitely possible. So it's also possible that their cash balance may be declining. Okay. So in that scenario, if they're already making these immense investments, tens of billions of dollars sent to Jensen Yuan, and I also listened to an interview of Gavin Baker about a week or two ago. And Gavin was talking at a podcast, and he said GPT 6.7 is going to take hundreds of billions of dollars to train. Hundreds of billions of dollars to train. So these obviously larger models have taken an order of magnitude more to train. So are these companies, Wes, do you think in a position with stable free cash flow, so it's not growing, and potentially declining cash balances already, are they in a position to spend hundreds of billions of dollars in buying more to train the next version of GPT?
It's interesting. So I listened to that per your request, and I found Gavin to kind of have a high level understanding of what's happening. So like first level would be, yeah, you need to
Exactly.
spend a crazy amount of money to train all of these. But from an engineer standpoint, that's not all of the things that you can do. There's a lot of things that you can do to optimize these models and architecture. There's a lot of ways that you can train the training progress or the training system. So at the end of the day, like it scales. Like it's not just a one for one. So that's why this whole 10 times training data, gets you to, a much smaller level of reliability. So I worry that, that kind of like that first level of understanding is that all people focus on, rather than like actually talking to the engineers that are making these things and understanding it for, how it actually works. So I don't believe that Microsoft needs all of that to get to GPT 5 and 6, with OpenAI. I get that the whole kind of like initial spend could be a really, really big number. I totally get that, because we really don't know what model size is gonna kind of crack the AGI nut, if you will. But over time, that's gonna come down. Once we create it, we're gonna optimize it. Like that's what engineers do.
Okay, ACDC, what's your take on? Go ahead.
Yes, I just wanted to confirm. Yes, their cash balance did decline from 111 billion to 75 billion from 23 to 24.
And in 2020, according to macro trends, again, I disclaim any sort of responsibility for this because I need to check the actual filings. It might be somewhere else in the asset side. And maybe ACDC, you can look at the long-term assets to see if there's like an increase in treasury bonds or something along those lines. But According to this graph, in 2020, this figure was $140 billion. So even higher. That's a massive drop. And of course, Microsoft is also buying stock back, issuing dividends as well. So that's not the only source of this decrease of the cash balance. But these are competing, priorities. Are you going to invest in more capex? Are you going to tell your shareholders that you're no longer going to buy stock back? Are you going to tell your dividend recipients that you're not going to be issuing dividend anymore? Are you going to be, like Wes said, cut back from other projects? Like, it's not like money is infinite and we're no longer in a 0% interest environment. At some point, these managements are going to have to make a decision. And if these, trillions of dollars of profits that people are talking about is 5-10 years out, can you stick it out through a potential recession in the next few years? Or are you going to bail like other companies did? So, I don't really subscribe to this idea of AGI is so important that no matter what, we're going to spend billions, tens of billions, hundreds of billions of dollars, trillions of dollars that we're going to raise from Saudi Arabia on this endeavor. I don't think that's a realistic assumption. All right. So that's why I'm short NVIDIA. All right. Anything else from the speaker board? We've been going on for 2 hours and 15 minutes. And then tonight we have AI Amateurs at 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Central, 5 p.m. Pacific. And highly recommend people join that as well. Sometimes we touch on Tesla topics, but we usually discuss non-Tesla AI topics. So I'm sure NVIDIA and others will come up as well. If not, then thank you very much for your participation. And I will chat with you all next time. Take care.